1 2 minutes. Okay.
Thank you.
It's too loud or whatever. Just this power right here.
Okay, well, I think we'll begin this evening, and my name's Jim Westcote from the Aga Khan Program for Islamic Architecture, and it's a very great pleasure and privilege to introduce our speaker this evening, architect Hisham Munir, as part of our lecture series called the Evening With series. The Evening With a distinguished architect that is really a special honor for us because Mr. Munir has got a particular strength in the field of Islamic architecture in Iraq. He earned a Bachelor of Architecture degree at the University of Texas, followed by a Master of Architecture degree at the University of Southern California, with a master's thesis on the subject of climate control in Islamic architecture. And this turns out to be very significant for our seminar in Islamic architecture and the environment next week, when we'll be talking about climate in Islamic architecture, and that thesis will be part of our readings for the seminar here at MIT at present. With so much interest in climate and architecture these days renewed, these early research studies that Mr. Munir was one of the pioneers for are particularly significant for us. After completing his degree, Mr. Munir taught in the United States for a couple of years before returning to Iraq and becoming the founder and first chairman of the Department of Architecture at Baghdad University. He also, at that time, founded his firm, Hisham Munir and Associates, and went on to develop one of the most distinguished practices in Iraq of the 20th century. Among the firm's many prominent projects were the University of Baghdad Judaiya campus, the Baghdad Medical City, many government buildings, Sheraton hotels of Baghdad and Basra, and many more. There were at least 18 major national and international competitions which the firm successfully won, or a small fraction of them, I think you came in second place. But the majority were first place awards of the 18 competitions entered, and 14 of the 18 were first place awards. Very fortunately for us here at MIT, and for the field of architecture, he has generously agreed to donate his archives to the MIT Aga Khan Documentation Center. And among the archives, this is an unusual and particularly important case because much of the drawing materials no longer survive. And so the oral history is as important as the documentary materials that will be coming to the library. And I'd like to thank, in particular, Dr. Sharon Smith for her initiative in the Aga Khan Documentation Center in helping to facilitate this preservation of the late 20th century practice in Iraq that will be the focus of tonight's presentation, and the title of which is When Architecture and Politics Collide. I thank architect Hisham Munir and ask you to join me in welcoming him to MIT.
Thank you, Mr. Westcombe, and thank Sharon and the Al-Farhan Group for the invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I'm honored to be here today with the opportunity to speak to you. In the next 40 minutes or so, I thought I'll tell you a little about my background and share with you 4 stories that show are the best and not of when politics and architecture intertwine. Then the next 20 minutes we'll have questions to answer. I'm an Iraqi born, like Jim said, I'm an Iraqi born architect, educated and trained. I went through various training. I was born in Baghdad. My father was a senior parliament member in the first Iraqi government and was part of the group that created the first Iraqi constitution. We lived in an upscale, very traditional house on the Tigris River. I think the description was very well in the master's degree, explained and described. My dream, of course, to become an architect and a builder. I was inspired by what I saw in my surrounding environment daily for years. When I finished high school, and I finished high school in 47, and graduated in the top of the class of the country. I was offered a scholarship by the Iraqi government to study abroad. I chose the architectural field. 2 things I was told as a student of architecture and as a student, as a new graduate. 2 things I was told about as a student of architecture. That's the first thing. And then when you graduate, as a new graduate of the U.S., that I often, this is part of my experience in the U.S., as I often tell many of the students. The first was during the orientation session at UT in Austin. The professor emeritus of the university told us, students, if you have chosen this architecture field to get rich, you are in the wrong field. To be rich, you either have to marry or inherit it. Well, I married. The second was, Upon graduation from UT Austin, I went to interview for my first job in Dallas. That was 53. I was recommended to this office by the head of the architecture department. I presented my credentials to the head of the office. I was so proud as I had received the gold medal of the Austin chapter of the American Institute of Architects, AIA. I was also a member and president of the local chapter of the National Honorary Fraternity of Architectural Students, the Tau Sigma Delta. The gentleman leaned over and said, "Son, this is all very nice. Now, do you want to learn real architecture?" Well, I was surprised by the question and said, "Okay." He leaned even closer and said, "You have to start working under our chief draftsman." It took me a while to comprehend what he just said, and it hit me. This time, it's time to turn academic knowledge into applied. That was a great lesson. I accepted it was a great experience, and I really learned how important it is to know the accurate details of the integration of other services in the design of buildings. I adopted this lesson later when I co-founded the architectural department in the University of Baghdad, and in my own practice. Of course, present-day technology makes such integration faster, simpler, easier compared to 53 years ago. In 1957, I returned to Baghdad. That's after 10 years. I was appointed in the Directorate General of Works and Housing. The office was an extension. They added an extension to a historical place. It is a historical Ottoman Sarai. It's built by the Ottoman, and where most of the government then were occupied these buildings. So they added this, and as I started to survey the architecture development in Iraq, after being away for 10 years, I was struck by the distinct difference between the works of American graduates versus those European. The American influence was beautifully realized by the works of Nizar and Ellen Jordan, both Harvard graduates. In 1958, I opened my office, Hisham Munir and Associates. In 1959, the Dean of the College of Engineering, Dr. Naji Abdul Qadir, a graduate of Utah University. He called me, invited me to his office to discuss establishing the Department of Architecture at the College of Engineering. There I met for the first time Dr. AKPIA, a Liverpool graduate. Also met for the first time Abdullah Hassan Kamil, a graduate of Harvard, Urban and City Plan. The three of us formed the first department of architecture in Iraq. I was appointed as the academic secretary and in charge of teaching, given my teaching experience at USC, as I shared some teaching experience. A little known fact, I used the UT Austin 53 syllabus as a guide to our start. From 59 to 94, that's the period I went on the building one of the most successful architectural offices in Iraq. It was, I think, was also the largest. We completed almost 100 projects all over Iraq and in the Gulf. We shared in 18 competition, local, national, and regional, and we won first prize 14 and fourth second prize. More than once we won, then political interference and competition was redone. In some of these projects, we shared again and we won again. Let me tell you a few interesting things, the stories of the good, the not so good, and the conflicted. In the 40s and the early 50s, the kingdom was working on building and developing the country using the small oil revenue they were collecting from the British. They were sending students to study abroad. They sent hundreds to Europe and America. In 1954, King Faisal II established the planning board with British, American, and European advisors and selected Iraqi technocrats, headed by the Prime Minister. The planning board wanted to introduce Iraq to the international community as progressive, ambitious country. To do so, they invited world-known architects and assigned project to each to do. The list includes Gropius, and the leading artist of that period, Gropius, Franklin Wright, Le Corbusier, Dudok, Alvar Aalto, Gio Ponti, and Oscar Niemeyer, the master of concrete curves. One of my first brushes with the architectural politics, with the architectural politics conflict, was the story of Oscar Niemeyer. He was invited to do a job. Oscar Niemeyer refused to participate for political reasons, being a leftist. He would not serve any monarch, so he didn't share. That's the first counter for politics versus architecture. In 1958, a coup or revolution took place led by General Qasim against the monarchy. Early in his tenure, General Qasim was left leaning to get support. These influences started to manifest very clear. He had eliminated the planning board, and his government started to eliminate foreign staff and distributed planning board projects to related ministries to handle. The university was assigned to the Ministry of Works and Housing, the University of Baghdad, the design. I quickly realized that these political changes are going to affect the university project being carried by Americans. I acted quickly and met the first president of the University of Baghdad, Dr. Abdul Jabbar Abdullah, an MIT graduate, I think in '42, and an Einstein awardee. Dr. Abdullah was a family friend, and he assured me backing when the matter comes to him. I contacted Gropius by telex. That's our media that time. And urged him to come to visit the leader of the revolution, General Qasim. Gropius and partner Louis Macmillan, who used to come to Baghdad about 4 times a year. They both attempted. I made an appointment with the minister, Engineer Hassan Rifat, and we went to meet General Qasim in the office at the Ministry of Defense. We took with us pictures of the model Jacobi presentation, and I did the job. All the presentation was done by Jacobi. And we display all of this we displayed this in his simple office in the Ministry of Defense. He had his shirt in the vitrine where he was shot in an attempt to be killed, so we had it in the vitrine. When Qasim saw the design and was very impressed, he said to Gropius, I want this university to be the best in the Middle East. He wanted us to start with the tallest building, which is the faculty tower, 22 stories, and to the open arch entrance to start as soon as possible, so that he could see it from his office, and he wanted people to be able to see these big tall buildings too, so that people will know that the government is building the country. That gave us the green light to start tender one, to advertise. We were also able to start the actual construction of the new University of Baghdad. That was a great event in the history of Iraq and the birth of a great cultural center in the area. Horse racing. complex. Now we were awarded this prestigious project in '83. You know, horse racing is a great Arab tradition. They all have this from the old days. The mandate was to build a complex of the highest international standard to honor the Arabian horses and let Arab to Arab also this tradition, the competition in the old days in horse racing. The site of the project was in Abu Ghraib area, near the famous prison Abu Ghraib. For our research, we visited many race courses, particularly Ascot in England, which was of excellent and memorable quality. I was very proud of the design. The inverse umbrella, this was an inverse umbrella forms were our inspirational by the head umbrellas used by the spectators. You can see them all by the spectators. And the palm trees that form shades along the street and their endurance, this function of protecting the spectators under the endurance of hot sun and high temperature. The structure needed to be symbolic of modernity. Everyone associated with the project felt that it to be the most glamorous and prestigious racing stand. We used lightweight, high-strength concrete for the umbrellas that extend 24 meters diameter. That's quite a lot. Adopting the lift slab system on a concrete core. Around the concrete core, all concrete cores were completed and the umbrellas formed, ready to receive the concrete, and cables were all connected with these cores to the top of the core to lift the slab, to lift the umbrella. In late 80s, the political wind had shifted again. Saddam began to lean toward religion. Ultimately, there was a directive to stop the project, as the religious influencers, the people around, had suggested that gambling was against religion. So that conflict ended. Only the cores and the stand floor was completed, and Abu Ghraib skyline, you can see only the cores presently effective. Very saddening. The Agricultural Museum, another project. The Agricultural Museum was part of the Higher Agricultural National Council complex. It was a big complex. The museum part was put to competition. We won it. Interestingly, through political interference, the competition was redone. We won it again. The complex included the Higher Council headquarters with related ministries, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Irrigation, Agrarian Reform, and all the related departments. The complex also contained a conference hall, library, computer center, the Agricultural Museum, and other supporting facilities for the complex. We designed the master plan for that complex, and other consultant firms shared in the architectural aspect. To me, the Agricultural Museum was one of those buildings so near to me, to my heart, which it always come to my mind as a unique achievement of the period. It is well known fact that museums have a unique and distinguished status among any and all other landmarks worldwide, universally appreciated and admired and recognized. They are a treasure vault for each culture to that they hold dear to them, their heritage and their tradition. They are a reflection of the value of society placed on their past accomplishment. The Agricultural Museum in Baghdad has the present deeply reflect and belonging to the rich and deep-rooted of our culture and history of Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. My goal was to make the creative work of the museum building itself a display monument reflecting the content and the history and belonging to the rich element it will house. To do that, we had to study the most interesting designs, systems, and plans used by Iraqis throughout history to identify innovations that need recognition and presentation. Information on design of irrigation system, sizing water lifting, the Babylonian hanging garden, the dams, the slopes, and the sharing organization, and organizing the law were all written in cuneiform, printed in clay tablets found near the site and around the ziggurat. That was a great source. They made dams, even in Ur, there were traces of all this, changing the direction and extending. As such, inspirational of the design of the building, the inspiration of design was a modern interpretation of the hanging garden of Babylon and the historic ziggurat. It is an inspiration that led me to design this, tying the old with the new in a modern technology. But not literal. In doing so, the building itself is a showpiece and homage to the advancement and thinking of that period, and as a structure that will house a more complete history of agriculture in Iraq. When the building was near completion, high-ranking political party officials loved the structure so much that they decided it was going to be the Ba'ath. They converted to their Ba'ath party headquarters. Became headquarters building. Designed for a completely different purpose, this change required a huge changes within the structure and outside. Provide many other facilities, the basement, lot, all kinds of changes we will have to go through. They also changed the name to Qasr Adnan Palace. When Iraq was invaded in 2003, the U.S. Military Political Council seems to also like that building. That became their headquarters. Thus, the museum really went through two political changes and destroyed its design concept and purpose it was to serve. Very sad. I closed my office in 1996. Saddam was still in power. So I would leave this question for you.
Thank you very much for this account. I know there will be questions, and if people would like to raise the questions and speak very loudly, that would be great. Yes,
I
please.
need it that
Yes.
Thank you for a very fascinating presentation. I wonder if you could speak a bit about the destruction that's happened in Iraq and sort of what that means to you to have lost so much of the rich architecture and cultural places that were in the country before really the wars of the last 10 years.
She wants to know your opinion, your thoughts about the destruction that has happened in Iraq over the last
10 years.
10 years.
Well, that involves really political, and to me, and from the news, the pro and cons, it's a conflict created that led to all kinds of destruction. You read in the paper that people up to now, from 2003 when Baghdad or Iraq was conquered, they still don't have water in many areas. They have no electricity. Some TV shows people demonstrating. This is a political, I cannot be a decisive man, but definitely it has been a lot of destruction. I don't have with me some of my projects were them. We designed the Ministry of Commerce. And that building, I have a picture, was burned. And in 2003. Now, not only that, the museum was robbed, was one of the richest museums in the world about the early history of human development in that area. And, you know, the history of Ur and other cultural places, Babylon, some of these, I mean, it is something that the Cultural Council in here in the state before the war were warning the government, American government, to be careful with the Iraqi, anything to do with monument, historical sites that are like Babylon and Ur and all that. So the building from that period till now, it hasn't been rebuilt. In some areas were built, some areas weren't. But in general, I mean, the pros and cons, the news you hear, there are conflicts. I've been away. I left because of the war. I haven't been back home, unfortunately. I was invited by the mayor office twice to go and visit. They were getting together to celebrate some of our work, especially the mayor office he designed, and I asked if it is safe. They said, yes, we take you from the airport to the conference, a conference back to the airport, and you'll be under. I said, that's fine, like that. I'd like to walk and see my relatives, my friends, see some of my projects. He said, that's at your risk, because they cannot control it. So things like that happen. Anything could happen. Unfortunately, I cannot be a good judge on this. This is a political problem.
Rio.
I have a question. To what extent do you consider your architecture Islamic or just international modernist?
The trend in many attempts of architects in the Arab world, there are attempts to make it literal, were copies of it already existing. To me, this was a creative work of the masters of that period. They exhausted the possibility, the capability, the aesthetic of all the materials they used to create beautiful, you know, some of this you saw the sculptural really with brickwork. Now, to do that, that really shows, you know, what do you call it? There's no creative work because you're copying. That's to me, that's absolutely no architecture, because you like say cut and paste. That's not architecture. To me, these things are inspirational. You should integrate it. I mean, some people cannot see it because they want to see literally. They identify it only by being literally. I do not agree. I think we should pass that stage and create it more inspired. That you can, if you look at it deeply and read it, and you can feel there are some relation. I mean, certain elements are very obvious. For instance, a courtyard is historic because people in the old tradition, all the buildings were wall to wall, and alleys were small alleys with extended to protect it, and the courtyard with the breathing space. But such an element is interesting. I used it, but not in a literal way. I developed it into semi-open, so that it has the feeling, and it's useful. The part that is useful to add to the work, I use it. When it is not, now climate was one of the features that they were really doing it. For instance, in the old houses, courtyard, of course, they have fountains in the middle, and they have like what they call it a bad gear, which is a channel that goes up. So from there they get a semi-basement, and that is cooler because of the depth in the ground. And then in some areas they put even little like water. It's not a swimming pool or anything, just a little to get it little humid. And when the air comes, this is a natural tradition, a natural movement. In fact, my first study in Texas, they were doing great research in ventilation. And it's more or less similar to that concept, but that was concept. And they had to do it that way. And they go up, in the summer, they all sleep on the roof. And what they do, before evening, they spray, usually made of a brick, and heat evaporates, and it becomes cool, and people go, and they take with them water with these pots that are ceramic, that can get cool air and get very cool morning. At noontime, they have what they call chadder, which you pull and you cover the courtyard. I mean, these are so elementary, but were creative work for the period. You cannot exactly do the same. Now, people, the temperature that was comfortable under that is not more acceptable. It became first more acceptable with evaporative cooling. And then that was too much humidity, it ended up in air conditioning. So all of that material start changing. And all the new material, insulation, glass that has the fiber and all the strength of it, the insulation, present day. Now these things you have to use, but that doesn't mean that has no roots, because you have to be not only be a part of the new world, but you have to develop things better and more efficient. You know, now you're using all the sustainable, all of these, the deed on our cookies, but they were using it in the same manner, but in a different form. But to me, it should never be a literal, especially in the architecture. And people think only by putting arch, it's the end. That's not the end, it's the wood. You can use it as symbolic, yes, but they were using it as a structure. So it's some little difference. I hope the answer.
Yes, please.
Thanks a lot. The Arab world is going today through massive waves of destruction. I mean, what's happening in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Palestine. A destruction that deliberately is attacking our history and cultural identity. As a young generation of Arab architects, we're very pessimistic about the rebuilding process. As an architect who lived through different periods, historical and political periods in Iraq and the Arab world, what word of advice or word of wisdom you have for the young Arab generation who hopefully will be part of the rebuilding process?
Not very clear, definitely clear. It involves a lot of aspects, it's not direct. But I can tell you, the cultural attaché here with the American group formed a group, society, or a meeting whereby the Iraqi people who are professionals, medical, agriculture, chemical, architecture, to help Iraq. Al-Khalili, Dr. Al-Khalili, he's really a physician, a well-known physician. And the people that they were invited from all over. Some of the professors that were teaching in Iraq, not in our college, but in the College of Engineering that I know, also came. There were many of them from various parts. All left because of the war. They went back to areas where most probably they have studied. Some yes, Stanford, Stafford, probably some here at MIT, I don't know. But I met a lot of them. Now, in our class, many problems were raised, but they're all willing to help. Now, at that time, they all complained. Some of them went. They said, we suffered, there's no proper hospitals and all. They were worried about that. Some also suffered that many ministries didn't respond properly. Now, in my opinion, the deputy minister attended also the small conference. I was invited. And about architecture, but he was talking in general, how we encourage sending people abroad. I said, in my opinion, there are two ways to help people. There's a long term, a short term. To get a short term is to bring staff from abroad. When I was head of the department after Makia, I went personally to search for staff from London school and brought to teach in our department. This immediately bring the University of Baghdad had a contract with Texas, University of Texas. They sent us 2 staff, and one of them, I had to sort of compare the teaching. He was that was in 73. Yes, I think 73. I mean 63, 64, and he was teaching then. So we got to bring the teaching at that level by the staff. So that's an immediate. The long term is to send a graduate, all when they finish high school and they finish architecture degree, they should go abroad, because to go the present situation, there are many departments of architecture established. This, unfortunately, this is my opinion, because I know that some of my students who work in my office are now deans of colleges. Now,
What words of advice to the students,
yeah,
to the
that's,
young students?
yeah, for the student, they should, this way, they should really, long term, they should go abroad after they graduate. They shouldn't take a postgraduate in the same schools, because it's the same staff, the same, they will not be learning much. They should change. That's the advice. I don't know literally how to teach the advice, because I'm not aware of what the syllabus they use, what are the courses they use. Although we established the basic courses and the years that the complexity of the project, the kind of project, and then where they can get integrating all of these services and how to go on all of that, and how to select the thesis, and how to, all of this was established, and we were developing it every year, because we looked, open all of this year, check and discuss the development, and that was quite a way we sort of made some of my graduate, 2 of my graduates who worked in my office joined MIT, and they did their masters in absolutely very short time. It's amazing. One of them is Ed Ani and Ahmed Imam. They both working. They were my students. They worked in my office. They were trained. So this is, I don't know what they are teaching them now. Although I met the present head was at Baghdad School of Architecture, is my student, Ghada Silk, Dr. Ghada Silk, very smart girl, and she was here. Yes, in Boston and in New York. I shared in New York on the city of Mirat. She was there with another of my student called Junan Karam. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, Sharon.
Hi, thank you for coming. This is probably something architect students might already know, but I'm not an architect. In your project for the race course, in the inverted umbrella, if it rained, where would the water go?
Within the car, they will do it. There are drains in the core, within the core.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
not a problem. Besides, we don't have much rain like this.
But some might come.
We should put an umbrella on.
As a water person, I'll follow up on Sharon's question, because all of that water could be collected for irrigation purposes, and it leads, you mentioned the historic irrigation systems. And I'm curious, in this period of when you were leading the University of Baghdad's architecture department, there was a real incorporation of landscape and environmental planning starting to happen. Could you tell us about the history of how that happened, and to what extent this more landscape dimensions of architectural design were realized, or also had similar issues with the politics of the times?
I'm sorry, my ear. Well, of course, we did include a course taught on landscape in the program as one of the courses, supporting courses. That was in our work, during our period. I think then later on, Abdullah Sam's Harvard graduate, they formed the planning department. And they started work on part of this. I think they included preservation, development, and new areas to develop landscape, all the facilities for gatherings, landscape. They did have good idea in the planning of Baghdad to create big parks and all of that. But during government, some of these landscapes they found interesting or political, they donate to a party or something. So this happens quite often, unfortunately. But I think in the long run, what can save the country is a technocrat that can lead the country and control beyond political parties. Because these political parties, their interest may not be for the whole country, to their party. While technocrats, they can look at the thing in a total. For instance, the planning board, when they started, they did every study. Now, I know an American firm was invited in the planning board, by planning board, that did is Tippett, Abbott, and McCarthy. I don't know whether they are, what state they are from, but they were very well known. They did complete survey for drainage of Iraq, not city drain, it's for agricultural drainage, and for disposal of all of the drains into a new river. Now that plan has not been realized. They start realizing, and some of the plans that are the present government or the later government are doing are still the project requested or planned by planning board, because the planning board at the time was looking at all of Iraq and no specific area. They all look at the whole there. There's a problem in agriculture, there's a problem in irrigation, there's a problem in electricity. So all of this was looked in a total. And this was going, and still going, I'm sure, following them.
On that integrative perspective, with hopes for a better future. Thank you very much.